The Arizona sun of 1,875 beat down on Dry Gulch like a relentless hammer, turning the dusty trading post into a shimmering mirage of adobe shacks and weathered canvas tents. The air was thick with the scent of sun-baked earth and the faint tang of sweat from the traders haggling over hides and whiskey. Jacob Reed stood at the edge of the square, his broad shoulders hunched under a worn cotton shirt patched at the elbows, his trousers faded from years of toil. At 45, his face was a map of lines carved by solitude and loss, a faint scar above his right brow, a memento of a cattle stampede he'd survived. His calloused hands gripped a hoe, its handle smoothed by years of labor, and his boots, caked with red desert sand, shuffled as he surveyed the crowd. Jacob was a farmer, a man who'd lived alone on his failing homestead for a decade, his wife and son lost to fever, his heart buried with them in the dry soil. He'd come to Dry Gulch for seed and supplies, his farm struggling under drought and debt. The trading post was a rare break from isolation, but it offered little hope. Prices were high, his purse light. As he bartered with a grizzled merchant, a commotion drew his eye. A group of rough men, their faces shadowed by wide-brimmed hats, dragged a woman toward a makeshift auction block. She was Apache, her dark hair tangled and streaked with dust, her buckskin dress torn at the hem, revealing legs scarred from struggle. Her eyes, sharp and defiant, met his, a spark of fire in their depths. The auctioneer's voice cut through the noise. Last Apache woman left from the raid on Cedar Creek. Sold to settle a debt, strong hands for work. $50. Jacob's stomach twisted. Cedar Creek, a month past, had been a slaughter. Apache families wiped out by ranchers claiming land, a tale whispered with shame. This woman, the last survivor, was no slave, yet here she stood, a prize for the highest bidder. The crowd jeered, but Jacob's gaze lingered. He needed help on his farm, yes, but something in her stance, unbroken, despite her chains, stirred a memory of his wife's resilience. Against his better judgment, he raised a hand. $50, he said, his voice steady. The auctioneer grinned, pocketing the coin as the men shoved her toward him. She's yours, farmer. Name's Ayanna. Ayanna's eyes narrowed, her wrists raw from the ropes as Jacob untied them. I'm no property, she said, her English halting but fierce. Jacob nodded, stepping back. You're free to go. I just needed help, not a slave. Her gaze softened, but suspicion lingered. Why buy me then, she asked. Jacob shrugged, his scar itching under the sun. Saw you fight. Figured you'd earn your keep, not mine. Ayanna studied him, her silence a wall, but she didn't run. The desert offered no safety for a lone Apache woman, and Jacob's farm, for all its hardship, was a chance. They walked to his wagon, the crowd's murmurs fading. Jacob loaded his seed, Ayanna carrying a sack with a strength that belied her thin frame. Her buckskin dress, adorned with faded beads, rustled with each step, and a small pouch hung at her waist, its contents a mystery. My farm's a day's ride, Jacob said. You can work, or leave when you're ready. Ayanna's lips tightened. I stay for now, but I owe you nothing. Jacob nodded, respecting her pride. The journey began, the wagon creaking under the weight of supplies and an uneasy alliance. The trail wound through arid plains, the red cliffs of Dry Gulch receding into the haze. Jacob's mind drifted to his past, a young farmer with dreams, shattered by fever that took his family, leaving him to toil alone. His land, once fertile, now yielded little, and debt to local ranchers loomed. Ayanna's presence was a disruption, but also a spark. She sat silently, her eyes on the horizon, her hands tracing the pouch at her waist, a habit that hinted at secrets. As dusk fell, they camped near a dry creek bed, the stars piercing the velvet sky. Jacob built a fire, its crackle a comfort against the night's chill. Ayanna watched, her posture tense. Why live alone? She asked, her voice low. Jacob poked the fire, his face shadowed. Lost my wife, my boy. Couldn't face the world after. Ayanna's eyes softened, a flicker of understanding. I lost my tribe at Cedar Creek. You're not the only one broken. The words hung between them, a bridge of shared pain. Their peace was short-lived. Hoofbeats echoed in the distance, growing louder. Jacob grabbed his rifle, Ayanna rising with a knife from her pouch. Shadows emerged, 3 riders, their hats marked with the brand of Caleb Holt, a rancher who'd claimed Apache land after the raid. The leader, a burly man with a scarred cheek, dismounted. Reed, he growled. That Apache squaw's ours. Holt wants her back. Jacob's jaw tightened. Holt's greed had fueled Cedar Creek's massacre, and now he claimed Ayanna as spoils. She's free, Jacob said, his rifle steady. Ride off, or we fight. The man laughed, drawing a pistol. You're outnumbered, farmer. Ayanna moved like a shadow, her knife flashing, disarming him with a swift cut to his hand. Jacob fired, his shot grazing another rider's shoulder, sending them scattering. The third fled, shouting threats. Holt'll burn you out. Ayanna stood tall, her breath heavy, her eyes meeting Jacob's. You didn't have to do that, she said. Jacob lowered his rifle, his scar prickling. Ain't right what they did, what I let happen before. His voice broke. The memory of past inaction land disputes he'd ignored surfacing. Ayanna nodded, her suspicion easing. You're not like them, but Holt won't stop. Jacob agreed, the fire's glow casting shadows on his face. The desert stretched vast, its silence a promise of more trials. Ayanna's presence was a challenge to his solitude, her strength a mirror to his guilt. He'd bought her to save his farm, but now he fought to save her, and perhaps himself. The night deepened, the stars bearing witness to an alliance born in dust and defiance, with Holt's wrath looming on the horizon. The Arizona night cloaked Jacob Reed and Ayanna as they left Dry Gulch, the wagon creaking under the weight of seed sacks and the fragile hope of a new alliance. The desert stretched vast and silent, its red sands glowing faintly under a sky studded with stars, the air cool but heavy with the promise of trouble. Jacob guided the mules with steady hands, his worn cotton shirt damp with sweat, his patched trousers brushing against the wagon's splintered seat. His rifle rested across his lap, a constant companion since the skirmish with Caleb Holt's men, his scar above his right brow prickling with unease. Ayanna sat beside him, her buckskin dress rustling softly, the faded beads glinting in the moonlight, her small pouch a silent enigma at her waist. Her dark eyes, sharp and wary, scanned the horizon, her presence a challenge to Jacob's solitary life. The trail to Jacob's farm wound through arid plains, the red cliffs of Dry Gulch fading into the distance, replaced by scattered mesquite and the occasional skeletal cactus. Jacob's mind churned with the day's events, his impulsive purchase of Ayanna, her fierce defiance, the attack by Holt's men. He'd bought her to save his failing homestead, but her strength and the guilt of her tribe's massacre at Cedar Creek gnawed at him. We'll reach my place by dawn, he said, breaking the silence. Ayanna's gaze didn't waver. Your place, your rules, she replied, her voice low but edged. I stay until I choose otherwise. Jacob nodded, respecting her autonomy, though her distrust cut deeper than he'd expected. The journey was arduous, the mules straining under the load, the wagon wheels grinding against the rocky path. Jacob offered her water from his canteen, a gesture of goodwill. Ayanna accepted, her hands steady, but her eyes searching his. Why help me? She asked. Jacob hesitated, the memory of his wife's gentle hands and his son's laughter surfacing. Lost my family to fever, he said. Been alone since. Figured you needed a chance, same as me. Ayanna's expression softened, but suspicion lingered. Men like you take, not give. Prove it. Their truce was tested as night deepened. The trail narrowed near a watering hole, a rare oasis where traders and outlaws crossed. Jacob reined in the mules, planning a brief stop. Ayanna tensed, her hand on the knife at her waist. Too open, she warned. Danger here. Jacob nodded, his rifle ready, but before they could move, a figure emerged from the shadows, a trader named Tom Grady, a wiry man with a crooked smile and shifty eyes. Jacob Reed, he called. Heard you bought an Apache squaw. Holt's looking for her. Jacob's jaw tightened. Mind your business, Tom. Grady smirked, his gaze on Ayanna. $50 says I tell him where you're headed. Ayanna's knife flashed, pinning Grady's sleeve to a post. Speak, and you die, she hissed. Jacob stepped forward, his rifle aimed. Walk away, Tom. This ain't your fight. Grady paled, yanking free and fleeing into the night, his laughter echoing. Holt'll find you. Jacob cursed under his breath. Grady's treachery would lead Holt straight to his farm. We move faster, he said. Ayanna nodded, her respect for him growing, though trust remained a fragile thread. The ambush came at midnight. Hoofbeats thundered, and 3 of Holt's men, led by a scar-faced rider, surrounded the wagon. Hand her over, Reed, the leader barked, his pistol drawn. Jacob fired, his shot grazing a rider's arm, sending him reeling. Ayanna leapt from the wagon, her knife striking another man's leg, her movements swift and precise. The 3rd rider charged, but Jacob's second shot dropped him, the canyon falling silent save for the groans of the wounded. Ayanna stood over the leader, her knife at his throat. Tell Holt to leave us, she said, her voice cold. The man spat but fled with his surviving companion. They bandaged their minor cuts, the wagon's wheel damaged but intact. Ayana's eyes met Jacob's, her suspicion easing. "You fight for me," she said. Jacob wiped sweat from his brow, his scar itching. "Ain't about you alone. It's about what's right." Ayana's gaze softened, but she pressed. "You've done wrong before. I see it." Jacob sighed, the weight of his past pressing down. "Years ago, I ignored land disputes. Apache land taken by force. Didn't stop it. That's on me." His voice broke, the guilt raw. Ayana nodded, her own pain surfacing. "My tribe was slaughtered at Cedar Creek. Holt led it. I was left to die." The confession hung between them, a bridge of shared sorrow. Jacob offered her the reins, a sign of partnership. "We're in this together," he said. Ayana took them, her hands steady. "Then we survived together." The wagon rolled on, the desert vast and unforgiving, but their bond deepened. Jacob's farm loomed closer, a sanctuary under threat, while Holt's wrath, fueled by Grady's betrayal, grew nearer. The night stretched ahead, its stars bearing witness to an alliance born in dust and redemption, with trials yet to come. The Arizona desert stretched like an endless sea of fire, its red sands baking under a sun that hung low and merciless, casting a shimmering haze across the arid plains. Jacob Reed and Ayana pressed onward, the wagon creaking under the weight of their fragile alliance, its damaged wheel groaning with each jolt. Jacob's cotton shirt clung to his broad frame, soaked with sweat, his patched trousers caked with dust, and his boots scuffed from the rocky trail. His rifle rested across his lap, a constant reminder of the ambush at the watering hole, his scar above his right brow prickling with the strain of vigilance. Ayana sat beside him, her buckskin dress weathered and torn, the faded beads glinting faintly, her small pouch a silent sentinel at her waist. Her dark eyes, sharp with survival, scanned the horizon, her presence a beacon of strength amid the desolation. The farm, a day's ride away, loomed as a sanctuary under threat, with Caleb Holt's wrath fueled by Tom Grady's betrayal. Their water was scarce, the canteen they'd bought from Grady now half empty, their supplies reduced to a few strips of jerky and a handful of cactus fruit Ayana had gathered. The desert tested them with every mile, its silence broken only by the wind's low moan and the occasional cry of a hawk. Jacob's mind wrestled with his past years of ignoring land disputes that led to Apache suffering, a guilt that gnawed deeper with Ayana's presence. "We need to reach the farm before dark," he said, his voice rough. Ayana nodded, her hand resting on her knife. "The land knows us," she said. "Follow its signs." Her Apache wisdom, honed by a life stolen at Cedar Creek, guided them, but the threat of Holt's men loomed larger. By noon, the desert's fury unleashed. A sandstorm brewed on the horizon, a roiling wall of red dust that swallowed the sky, its roar a challenge to their endurance. "Take cover," Jacob shouted, reining the mules toward a cluster of boulders. The wagon lurched, its damaged wheel splintering further, forcing them to abandon it. Ayana grabbed her pouch, Jacob his rifle, and they scrambled behind the rocks as the storm hit, its force a living thing that clawed at their skin and choked their lungs. Jacob shielded Ayana, his coat flapping wildly, the dust stinging his eyes. The tempest raged for hours, leaving them coated in grit, their water lost to the wind. As the storm passed, the desert revealed a new peril. A rattlesnake coiled near their refuge, its rattle a warning in the silence. Ayana moved first, her knife flashing, but Jacob grabbed a stick, distracting the snake as she struck, pinning its head. "Good work," she said, her voice steady. Jacob nodded, his respect for her growing. "You've seen worse," he replied. Ayana's eyes darkened. Cedar Creek was worse. This is just the land's test. They shared a moment of understanding, their bond strengthening amid the danger. That night, they camped in the boulder's lee, a small fire their only warmth. The wagon's loss weighed on Jacob, his farm's survival now uncertain. Ayana offered him cactus fruit, her hands deft. "You fight for me," she said. "Why?" Jacob poked the fire, his face shadowed. "I turned a blind eye to Holt's raids years ago. Let Apache land be taken. That's my shame." Ayana's gaze softened. "My tribe died for that land. You're trying to right it now." The confession bridged their distrust, a fragile trust taking root. Dawn brought hope and danger. As they scavenged for water, Apache figures emerged from the canyon. Chato, Ayana's uncle, and his warriors, their faces painted, their spears glinting. "You live," Chato said, his voice warm but cautious. Holt's men follow. He offered a water skin, his eyes on Ayana. "You're the last, niece. We thought you gone." Ayana embraced him, tears in her eyes. "Jacob saved me," she said. Chato nodded, offering Jacob a beaded bracelet. "You're kin now, farmer." The reunion was brief. Hoofbeats echoed Rafe, Holt's tracker, and 5 riders, their rifles ready. Chato's men melted into the rocks, leaving Jacob and Ayana exposed. "Run," Chato whispered, but Jacob stood firm, his rifle raised. Rafe's voice cut through the dust. "Hand her over, Reed, or die." Jacob fired, his shot grazing a rider, but Rafe's bullet struck Ayana's side, a shallow wound that drew a gasp. She fell, and Jacob lunged, shielding her as bullets flew. Chato's warriors struck, their spears felling 2 men, forcing Rafe to retreat. Jacob bandaged Ayana's side, his hands shaking. "You're tough," he said. Ayana smiled weakly. "You risked your life for me." Chato approached, his respect clear. "She calls you friend," he said. "That's rare." Jacob nodded, his guilt easing. "She's family now." The desert tested them, its trials forging a bond, but Holt's tracker was closer, and the farm's safety hung in the balance. They pressed on, the Apache guiding them, their alliance aflame against the encroaching dark. Broken Ridge rose like a sentinel from the Arizona desert, its rugged outcrop of red sandstone and twisted juniper, offering a stark contrast to the endless plains below. The sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the canyon floor as Jacob Reed, Ayana, and the Apache warriors led by Chato prepared for their stand. Jacob's cotton shirt was torn, his patched trousers stained with dust and blood from his grazed arm, his rifle steady despite the ache in his muscles. His scar above his right brow throbbed, a reminder of the battles that had brought him here. Ayana, her side wound bandaged with a strip from her buckskin dress, stood tall, her faded beads glinting, her small pouch a silent testament to her past. The beaded bracelet from Chato encircled Jacob's wrist, a symbol of the kinship that bound them. Caleb Holt, the rancher whose greed had massacred Ayana's tribe, was coming, his lust for Apache water sources, driving a force that threatened to end their journey. The ridge offered defensible ground narrow passes for ambushes, boulders for cover, and a dry creek bed for traps. Jacob fortified a rock outcrop with Chato's men, his hands rough from years of farming, now skilled in war. Ayana rigged tripwires with horsehair, her movements precise despite her pain, her knife ever ready. Eli, a young warrior from Chato's band, assisted, his eyes sharp with determination. "Holt wants the water," Ayana said, her voice low. "He'll kill for it." Jacob nodded, his guilt over past inaction fueling his resolve. "We hold him here," he replied. Eli handed him a sharpened stake, a silent pledge of unity. Chato distributed spears and arrows, his face painted with earth tones, his warriors poised like phantoms. "Rafe leads them," he warned. "He's close." Jacob's heart steadied, his bond with Ayana a shield against fear. "We fight as one," he said. Ayana's eyes met his, a flicker of trust breaking through. "You're more than a farmer now," she said. The words warmed him, a redemption he hadn't dared hope for. As dusk fell, hoofbeats thundered, raising clouds of red dust. Caleb Holt rode into Broken Ridge with a dozen men, Rafe at his side, the tracker's scar-faced grin, a harbinger of death. Holt, a broad man in a black coat, dismounted and called out, his voice a roar. "Reed, hand over the Apache and her water secrets, or this ridge becomes your grave." Jacob stepped forward, his rifle raised, his voice firm. "You'll have to take it, Holt," he shouted. The clash erupted like a tempest. Holt's men charged, their rifles spitting fire. Jacob's first shot dropped a rider, his aim honed by desperation. Chato's warriors struck from the shadows, their spears felling 2 more, while Ayana triggered a tripwire, a dynamite cache scavenged from an old mine exploding and scattering the attackers. But Holt's numbers were relentless, and Rafe's rifle was a deadly whisper, his bullet grazing Jacob's leg, drawing a grunt of pain. Ayana pulled him behind a boulder, her side wound seeping. "Stay alive," she growled, loosing an arrow that struck a man's chest. The ridge became a battlefield, its echoes ringing with gunfire and cries. Jacob fired again, dropping another rider, but Holt's voice cut through. "Ayana, tell me where the water is, or Reed dies." He held a pistol to Chato's head, the warrior's spear shattered. Ayana's eyes widened, her pouch clutched tight. "No," she cried, her voice raw. Jacob's heart sank. He couldn't lose another family. He signaled Chato's men to hold, his mind racing. Ayana stepped forward, her stance defiant. Holt massacred my tribe at Cedar Creek for our water. You'll never have it. The revelation hit Jacob like a hammer. Holt's greed wasn't just for land, but for the hidden springs that sustained the Apache, a secret Ayana's people had died to protect. Holt laughed, his pistol steady. Then you both die. But Ayana moved, shoving Jacob aside as Rafe fired, the bullet tearing through her chest. She fell, blood pooling in the dust, her knife still in hand. Jacob, no, he roared, lunging to her side. Chato's warriors charged, their spears a blur, felling 3 men. Eli struck with a rock, stunning a rider, while Jacob tackled Rafe, their struggle a tangle of fists and steel. Ayana, her breath fading, gripped his arm. Protect the water, she whispered. Jacob's revolver barked, the shot piercing Rafe's heart, ending the tracker's threat. Holt roared, charging with his pistol, but Chato's spear found his leg, bringing him down. The remaining outlaws fled, their horses vanishing into the dusk. Jacob knelt beside Ayana, his hands trembling as he pressed against her wound. Hold on, he pleaded, his voice breaking. Her eyes met his, a faint smile breaking through the pain. You're redeemed, Jacob, she rasped. The water is yours to guard. Her hand fell, her spirit slipping away, her sacrifice a final gift. Chato bound Holt, his men finishing the fight, the ridge falling silent. Holt was defeated, his men scattered, but Ayana's loss was a wound deeper than any bullet. Jacob cradled her, tears mixing with the dust on his face. Eli approached, placing a feather on her chest. She was our last, he said. Now she's with them. The Apache carried her to a pyre, their chants rising, a tribute to her courage. Jacob stood, his guilt eased by her words, his farm's safety secured at a cost. The ridge smoldered, the air heavy with loss and victory. Chato offered Jacob a place with the tribe, but he shook his head. I'll honor her at the farm, he said. The journey to Broken Ridge had broken Holt's grip, but Ayana's sacrifice would echo in the desert silence. Jacob's redemption was hers, and the water her legacy would flow free. The dawn broke over Broken Ridge, a tender light spilling across the crimson sands, where the scars of battle lay etched like the lines of an ancient story. The air hung heavy with the fading scent of gunpowder and the earthy aroma of smoldering mesquite, the desert reclaiming the chaos with a quiet, unyielding grace. Jacob Reed stood beside the pyre where Ayana's body rested, her buckskin dress now a shroud, the faded beads glinting faintly in the morning glow. Her small pouch lay open at her side, revealing a stone etched with Apache symbols, a relic of her lost tribe. Jacob's cotton shirt was torn, his patched trousers stained with blood from his grazed leg, his rifle slung over his shoulder, its barrel still warm. His scar above his right brow pulsed with the weight of grief, but his eyes, once shadowed by guilt, held a flicker of peace. The beaded bracelet from Chato encircled his wrist, a testament to the kinship that had brought him to this moment. Caleb Holt, bound and broken, slumped against a rock, his rancher's empire reduced to ashes, his greed no match for the courage of a farmer and a woman. The Apache warriors, led by Chato, moved with a solemn reverence, their painted faces reflecting the canyon's red hues as they prepared Ayana's final journey. The pyre, built with mesquite branches and smooth stones from the creek bed, stood as a monument to her sacrifice, the flames rising slowly under their chants, low, mournful melodies that wove through the air, honoring the last of her tribe. Jacob watched, his hands trembling as he placed the stone back into her pouch, a silent vow to carry her legacy. Eli, a young warrior from Chato's band, stood beside him, his eyes wet but steady, a feather in his hair, a mark of his own growth. She saved us, Eli said, his voice soft. You saved her. Jacob nodded, the words a balm to his wounded soul. The journey to a hidden Apache spring began, the warriors carrying Ayana's pyre through the canyon, its flames a beacon against the dawn. The trail wound through narrow passes, the red sandstone walls closing in, their surfaces etched with ancient markings that seemed to whisper her name. Jacob walked with them, his leg aching, but his spirit lifted by their unity. The spring emerged a clear pool nestled in a cavern, its waters reflecting the cavern walls adorned with carved stones and woven relics, a sacred place Ayana had died to protect. Chato knelt, offering a prayer, his voice echoing. Her spirit joins our ancestors, her water is safe. The tribe gathered around the spring, their gifts, blankets, baskets, a carved bowl now symbols of Ayana's legacy, their textures worn but vibrant. They offered Jacob a place among them, their eyes warm with gratitude. "You fought for her," Chato said. "Stay and redeem your past." Jacob hesitated, his mind drifting to his farm, a lonely patch of land where he'd buried his wife and son, where guilt had chained him for years. Ayana's words, "You're redeemed," echoed in his heart, her sacrifice a key to unlock that prison. "I'll stay," he said finally, "but I'll bring my farm back, with your help." The days that followed were a blend of mourning and renewal. The Apache taught Jacob their ways, how to channel the spring's water, how to weave the blankets, how to honor the land. Eli became his shadow, the boy's knowledge of the desert complementing Jacob's farming skills. They rebuilt a small outpost near the spring, its adobe walls rising under their hands, a fusion of Apache resilience and Jacob's labor. The farm, once a symbol of isolation, became a bridge between worlds, its fields watered by the spring Ayana had guarded. One evening, as the sun set, painting the canyon in shades of orange and purple, Jacob stood at the spring's edge, the beaded bracelet a constant reminder. Eli joined him, holding a new pouch woven by the tribe. "For you," the boy said. "Ayana would want it." Jacob took it, his eyes misting. "She gave me more than I deserved," he said. Eli smiled, a rare light in his young face. "She gave us family." The tribe celebrated with a feast, their songs filling the cavern, Ayana's name woven into the melodies. Jacob learned her story, how she'd survived Cedar Creek, how she'd fought to protect her people's water, how her spirit now watched over them. His past ignoring land disputes, letting Apache suffer, faded against her forgiveness. He wasn't just a farmer anymore, but a guardian, akin to those he'd once failed. Weeks later, the outpost thrived, its crops sprouting under the spring's nourishment. Jacob rebuilt his life, the Apache's help a lifeline, their laughter a balm to his loneliness. Ayana's pouch hung above the door, a shrine to her sacrifice. Chato approached one day, offering a carved staff. "Lead with her strength," he said. Jacob took it, his hands steady. "I will." The desert stretched vast, its red sands a testament to their fight, but it was no longer a place of solitude. Jacob's redemption was complete, not in wealth, but in the family he'd found: Eli, Chato, the tribe, all bound by Ayana's legacy. The sunrise over Broken Ridge was golden, its light a promise of a new harvest, and Jacob stood tall, a farmer reborn, the last Apache woman's spirit guiding him home.